Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. If you have not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as we're now on the road to 500 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. If you love sports content, sports talk, anything from sports betting to updated rankings every week, it's all right here on the Talk of the Town podcast. And here today, we have Why Not Wednesday, where every Wednesday I answer any questions you guys have for me right here on the pod. If you want your questions answered here every week, make sure to hit at Talk of the Town _pod on Instagram or TikTok to get your questions answered here every Wednesday. So let's get into the first question here today. Good to see you're a Pats fan. If the Patriots still had Jerod Mayo, do you think they'd still be 11-2? That's a really good question, actually. I guess the thing is with Jerod Mayo is pretty interesting, is that this year with Vrabel and how good they are, obviously they're 11-2 and they're the number one seed as of going into week 14. It hasn't really crossed my mind whether or not, if they still had Jerod Mayo, if they would be as good as they are right now. I mean, because without good Vrabel's been, you just kind of forget Mayo and that group of, what was it, DeMarcus Covington and Alex Van Pelt was the coaching staff last year. I mean, that was this time last year. It just, you completely forget about it with how good the team looks right now. No, probably not. I mean, I'm not going to say for sure. I mean, I think Vrabel definitely brings a lot more experience and just a lot more of a culture to the team. Like Mayo, he just felt kind of lifeless, especially in his press conferences and stuff like that. You just watched him, and even the players, there was just no signs of life. And one of the issues I had with Mayo last year is, I'm not saying this guy can ever coach or he can't ever coach, but I mean, he's incredibly unproven. We have no idea. And honestly, he's been very quiet since he's gotten fired last year. So no one really knows what he's doing. No one knows if he's going to get back into coaching or what the world. But the thing is with Mayo that really was a red flag, and I think it was the same for Robert Kraft and everything last year, was the fact that they were regressing every single week. Like, they won week 1 against Cincinnati. I mean, that was a pretty big upset. That was probably their best win of the year last year. They almost won week 2 against Seattle as well. They actually started off the year looking pretty decent with Jacoby Brissett. And then it just, compared to where they were from week 1 and 2 to where it ended, it was a completely different football team. I know they actually won their last game against Buffalo, and everyone was like, they sold their franchise. Joe Milton and Jerod Mayo sold their souls for the franchise to get that win. They would have had the number 1 overall pick if they lost that game, and probably could have gotten 3 first-round picks and still picked 3rd or 4th overall and gotten Will Campbell. So trust me, I haven't forgotten about that as a Pats fan. But who knows? The way it's turned out so far, it clearly has not seemed to hurt the organization in any way. But yeah, man, Jerod Mayo, I doubt it. I mean, I don't know if they'd be quite as bad as they were last year, just because I think the roster is better. The roster is way better than it was. The improvements on the offensive line. But you know, in fairness, too, I think Mike Vrabel came in and was pushing for them to be like, hey, we ain't going to be cheap. The Patriots have been notoriously cheap through how even the last years of Brady there for a while. They got really cheap. And I think Vrabel came in and kind of pushed the narrative a little bit like, hey, we're not going to be cheap. Like, I want this team to turn around fast. You can tell he's completely changed the culture in New England, which I just don't think Mayo was very much of a culture changer. He just went in and the team looked lifeless. They were regressing. I mean, hell, I remember, it was like an hour after the last game of the season against Buffalo that they had this long note and letter written about Jerod Mayo's firing. And I was like, they wrote that shit 2 weeks ago before that. But before that game ended against Buffalo, they had that shit written 2 weeks ago. So, I remember when Vrabel got hired last year, or not Vrabel, excuse me, Mayo got hired last year, that it was pretty guaranteed Mayo was going to be the coach. I mean, he's been seen as the successor as Bill Belichick for like 3 to 4 years before Belichick even left. It was like set in stone. Mayo was going to be the guy. So they felt pretty obligated, I think, to give him a chance. But clearly it didn't work. Now, whether or not, like you mentioned, they'd be 11-2, I don't think so. I think, hell, I don't know. Maybe they'd have that in half. I think at best, maybe 6 wins, 7 wins, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Mayo is so unproven, especially they kind of handed him they really put him in a bad situation last year. Like, I do feel for him. I don't care. You can stick Andy Reid in there. Um, Belichick again. We even seen Belichick his last year in New England. They were 4-13 with pretty much the same roster they had. It just, I don't care who you stuck in there. It wasn't going to work. So they really threw him into the fire a little bit, and they kind of wanted Vrabel. I remember when they did hire Mayo, it was like, Mike Vrabel was kind of waiting for the job. It's like, should they hire Vrabel? But like I mentioned, they felt obligated to do so. Or obligated to hire Mayo, and they gave it a shot. Didn't work. Whether or not he'll be a coach again somewhere else, I don't really know. But I think they would have improved now, even if they had Mayo, because the roster is just better. They had a really, really outstanding rookie class this year. Whether or not he made any changes within the drafting, I don't know. Probably not. I don't really know how much say he had in the draft room, but yeah. I'd assume they'd probably have half the wins, maybe they'd have 7 wins, but I don't think they'd be 11-2 just due to Vrabel's culture building and just experience as a coach in general. What job this offseason do you think is going to be the most sought after? So I think personally, let's just say the jobs that we know are going to be up for grabs next year. Let's see, I have it written down here. I have the Giants, Titans, Dolphins, and Falcons. I think Ray Morris is a dead man walking in Atlanta. I think he's done for. I think out of those 4, the guaranteed ones that I think are going to be open, there could be some more that open up, which I'll talk about here in a sec. The Giants, for sure, out of that. The Giants and Falcons are the 2 that stick out to me that are like, these guys got some real talent. There's something to work with there. And especially with New York, like, you have a young quarterback who has shown a lot of potential. You have star-studded pass rushers, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, maybe Abdul Carter. I think Abdul Carter needs an adult in the room. He's clearly immature. We've seen the whole thing happen against New England. He had the benching, and his teammates are saying he needs to grow up. I had a whole thing about that yesterday, talking about Abdul Carter yesterday. That he just needs an adult. That whole team needs an adult in the room. Not saying all of them are immature, but Mike Tomlin. I think if Mike Tomlin gets fired from Pittsburgh, which is still very up in the air, I don't know what Pittsburgh's going to do. We know they rarely ever fire coaches, or ever just get a new head coach in general. I think the Giants are going to be all over Mike Tomlin. I think I can so see him being the Giants head coach. No matter whether it's Tomlin or Saleh or anybody, who's the other one I'm thinking of? The Chargers defensive coordinator, Joe Brady, even is still kind of in talks of head coaching position. But anybody, the Giants is going to be the most sought after to me out of the guaranteed ones so far. And then I'd say the Falcons. Look, the Falcons, we know on offense they have a lot to work with. We don't really know if Penix is a franchise quarterback, and you can say the same with New York as well. Jackson Dart has certainly shown flashes, but Michael Penix, I don't know. I think a lot of it, he's mentioned that he's went to go get help within the organization and the coaching staff. They don't really seem interested in helping him. So I think to Penix's credit, he's older. Clearly his injury issues. He had a season-ending surgery a few weeks ago. That's clearly kind of scary there because he's very injury prone. He was in college anyway. Hasn't really shown that to this point in the NFL until now, but I'd say there's probably a little more stability within New York, but both of these franchises haven't been stable at all, really. And maybe Atlanta, at least within the last decade. Atlanta went to the Super Bowl about 8 years ago or so, and they've had some good seasons kind of leading up to that. Not really as of recently, but I think Atlanta and New York is like a coach away from being a playoff contender. They have serious talent. I'd say those 2, and then I think the Dolphins is probably 3rd. I don't think the Dolphins is really like a high-end job, but I'd say it's better than Tennessee. I think Tennessee's just a nightmare. It kind of feels like a New York Jets situation. Like, look, there's only 32 of these jobs. If someone offers you it, you kind of feel like you have to take it. There's not very many chances you get to be a head coach in the league. As I mentioned, there's only 32 of those positions. then anything can happen. You have a down year as a coordinator, and even, if you go somewhere as a coordinator and the head coaching position kind of falls down a cliff and the roster falls down, well, then your chances of being a head coach diminishes very quickly. So, you got to take these jobs. But Tennessee, you are working with Cam Ward. You do have something there, but in terms of the rest of the roster, it's garbage. I mean, you have to kind of hope they just don't really hang you out to dry. It's like that team needs more than a year or two to be back on their feet. Like, they need 3 or 4 years, I think. It can turn around quick, but they don't. I mean, besides Jeffrey Simmons, who kind of gets older by the year, in 3 to 4 years, I mean, he might be in his 30s now. I mean, he's getting older. He's been in the league for a little while now. They have to rebuild that roster from top to bottom, but at least they have a quarterback. But it's funny about Tennessee because they spent all of this money on receivers and yet have no receivers. And they spent all those money on receivers trying to replace A.J. Brown because they didn't want to pay A.J. Brown. But yet they really wish they had A.J. Brown. It's crazy what that organization has done. And they're looking for a coach, and they had Mike Vrabel. Look what he's doing in New England. It's like, it's just a nightmare between the decision-making there. But out of the guaranteed jobs, I'd rank it Giants, Falcons, Dolphins, and Titans. Now, some that I'm going to kind of go over here briefly that could become possibly open. Pittsburgh, again, I kind of mentioned Tomlin. Pittsburgh would be sought after like crazy. People love the organization. While the moves have been very questionable, they've been stable at least. They've had winning seasons, and clearly they're not afraid to spend money for players. So, I think Pittsburgh is one you could throw in there. Baltimore, potentially with John Harbaugh, that would be by far the most sought-after job. You get Lamar, you get a really good roster, Eric DeCosta, you get a really competent organization that's had long years, a lot of years of success and stability. So without a doubt, like you go walk into Lamar Jackson, Baltimore would be the number one destination by a mile there. And then Cincinnati, you look and you say, hey, you just mentioned Lamar and the Ravens. Well, of course, you have Joe Burrow, you have Jamar Chase, you have a lot to work with. But at the same time, that defense is a disaster to work with. And the ownership is just really cheap. I wouldn't trust the ownership as far as I could throw them within that organization. So I think it would just be frustrating as a head coach. And that's why I lean back from Baltimore. Baltimore, in terms of the front office and everything, is leaping bounds above the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'd mention the Bengals as well as Zach Taylor. They've been kind of mentioning firing him over the last couple of years. Wouldn't be surprised that job opens up. Then I'd say the Bills or Cleveland as well. I don't know what Cleveland's going to do with Stefanski. I've been known the last 4 years or so, or 3 years, should I say. They've been talking about firing them when they have bad seasons, but then they don't. You never know what Cleveland's going to do. So I have them there. And then Buffalo, it's interesting to see how that situation turns out with Sean McDermott. Again, that's going to be a Ravens situation where you get to walk into Coach Josh Allen. And so far, what's been the last probably about 10 years or so, pretty stable organization. I think Brandon Beane hasn't necessarily been as aggressive as they'd like him to be, but if you walk into that organization, I want to have some aggressive moves. We have Josh Allen with maybe 4 years of his prime left. Let's win a Super Bowl. That in Baltimore, Buffalo and Baltimore would become easily the most sought-after jobs as of this moment. I seen your take on Tomlin the other day, but honestly, I like Tomlin. He's going to be hard to replace. I think Aaron needs to be blamed more, and the quarterback play over the years has been abysmal. I think one of the things with Mike Tomlin is I do agree with you. He's going to be hard to replace. Mike Tomlin, the second he leaves Pittsburgh, or if they get fired or whatever happens, if it even happens, he is going to be the most sought-after coach by a long shot. Even if Saleh goes in, it ain't even close. Tomlin is probably going to go in the Hall of Fame as a coach. I'd say so. He probably is by the end of his career, for sure. I think the thing is, and what I've been saying with Tomlin in Pittsburgh is the relationship just feels fragmented, and I think it could end, to be honest with you. I feel like maybe they should split. But the thing is I feel like it should split because they're stuck in just above mediocrity. This season, they're going to finish with 8 or 9, maybe 10 wins. They're not going to draft nearly high enough to get a QB. The last time they had a losing season, they drafted Ben Roethlisberger. And look at where their organization was for, hell, a decade and a half, 2 decades, something like that almost. I mean, they were successful. We got a couple Super Bowls. I mean, they had a long period of success there with Ben Roethlisberger. Let me get this off my screen. That's on my screen here. It pops up. But they had a long period of success with Ben Roethlisberger. I just think in terms of rebuilding the organization, where it feels like it needs to be at, because the roster is not bad enough to be a 3 or 4 win team. I think even without Tomlin, they'd be worse. I think they'd finish probably with 5 or 6 wins, but that's still not going to get you a premier quarterback. Like, you look at Tennessee, you look at New Orleans, you're going to have to finish with like 2 wins, 3 wins, to get one of those higher ups there. Or if you finish with 5 wins, you're going to have to trade the farm to get up there. You're going to trade 2 or 3 first-round picks to trade up. So I think, if Steelers fans think that if they're going to replace Tomlin and it's going to make them even better or even just stay where they're at, I think they're highly mistaken. I think if you replace Tomlin with, let's say, Jesse Minter or something like that, or I'm trying to think of someone else, let's even just put in Saleh in the conversation or something like that, they finished with maybe 7 wins, 6, 7 wins, 5 wins, maybe something like that. Well, I wouldn't say 5 wins. I think they still have an okay team, but they definitely overachieved with Mike Tomlin. They're not going to get a new coach and this team's going to be better and finish with 12 wins and win a playoff game or 2. That's not going to happen. I don't think so at all, to be honest with you. So, I think if Pittsburgh fans are expecting Tomlin to be replaced and expecting it to be better, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think they do need a season or 2 of really just kind of tanking it and just going all in with winning 3 games in the next 2 years. What that's done for the Patriots. I mean, they won 2 back-to-back years of 4 wins. Drake May and Will Campbell. Then they got Mike Vrabel, and look how the organization has turned out. It's completely turned around just like that. They've had 8 wins the last 2 years before this year. They're at 11 already and had the number 1 seed. So I think they just need a couple of years like that. It's been so long since they've had a losing season. And when you pick 20th and 25th and 24th overall, there's only so much you can do in terms of an organization. Like, yeah, you can get a diamond in the rough. You still have a very high pick in terms of the overall just totals of the draft. There's 7 rounds. Of course, you still have a really high pick. But still, you're not going to get a premier QB. That seems very QB needy. I like Aaron Rodgers. You think Aaron Rodgers is more to blame? I mean, Aaron, you're kind of limited with him now, but I do think still you can win with him. Like, I think he's way better than Russell Wilson was last year. I mean, Russell Wilson is just, I don't know. He's beyond washed. Like, Russell needs to retire. We know that. I think he needed to retire last year. He's a one-dimensional quarterback. I think Aaron, you're more flexible, and he's on his receivers a lot. Look, his receivers aren't showing up to film meetings. I actually seen a report today that apparently they showed up to his house with a birthday cake, Aaron Rodgers' house, and they went in, they studied film, they actually signed Adam Thielen today, so maybe a turnaround is coming for Pittsburgh. I don't know, but I think they're going to finish with 8, 9, 10 wins maybe and be where they're at, and I think they need a quarterback. I think they need a young quarterback. They don't really have any positive momentum within the organization. I mean, it just feels the same every year. And their record's been the same every year, it seems like. And it kind of has been, to be honest with you. They float around 9 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins, sneak in the playoffs, maybe win their division, maybe not. And that's that. They just get in and they lose in the first round. So they need some positive momentum. I just think what's happening now, it's not working. You talk about quarterback play over the years has been abysmal. I think Aaron's actually been their best quarterback since Big Ben. Kenny Pickett, who they swung, they missed. They drafted him in the first round. Like, that draft was terrible anyway in terms of QBs. They were trying to make Desmond Ridder a first round QB and Malik Willis. And Kenny Pickett was just overdrafted. I mean, there was talks of him, like, if he would have went last year with the Williams and Daniels and May draft, he would have went in the 2nd or 3rd round. Probably the 3rd round he would have went in, to be honest with you. He wouldn't even been comparable to those guys. So he feels a lot closer to Quinn Ewers than like a Drake May or something like that, and who got drafted a lot closer than he did to Quinn Ewers in like the 6th or 7th round or something like that. So Yeah, I think it needs to split a little bit. I think it does need to split just so it can reset. It needs a reset. That's what the Steelers need. What is one NBA team you expected to do better this year? By the way, really enjoying your videos. Appreciate that. I think one team I definitely expected a lot more from was, let's see, let me go to the standings real quick. I will say one is the Wizards. I didn't expect the Wizards to be good, but I expected them to be better than I think like 3-16 or something like that. You look at the vets between Middleton and CJ McCollum, and Alex Sarr's taken a leap, but I expected them when they traded for Whitmore. I thought the Wizards would be better than they are. They're not 3-16 bad. They have a good roster. They have good vets. I think they have good young players. I just think the coaching stinks and the organization's brutal. I have the Wizards. I have the Bucks, who are just going downhill every week, it seems now, and every game. Giannis was going to be wanting out of Milwaukee like ASAP. I seen he deleted all of his posts of him playing in Milwaukee and just kept the championship ones up after they lost to the Wizards actually the other day. So they ain't looking good. The Mavs, who drafted Cooper Flag, I thought would be way better than that. They've just been a disaster, to be honest with you. The whole Klay Thompson thing and the Nico Harrison and Luka Doncic trade, that's going to loom over them for years. And I think, unfortunately for Cooper Flag, if he ain't playing like Luka Doncic, it's never going to be good enough for him in Dallas. I feel for him, to be honest with you. That's just looming over them. The Hornets, I thought with LaMelo and Brandon Miller, they'd be better, but that organization, again, it goes back to, you look at the Wizards, you look at Charlotte, like, these teams, no matter who they have, they stay bad because their ownership stinks. They're just not good organizations. You look at players who leave organizations like that and just turn out to be 20 times better. Like Denny Avdia going to the Trailblazers. I don't even think the Trailblazers are a great organization, but they're definitely a lot better than Washington. And he's going to be he's looking like he could be an all-star. And with Washington, he was like maybe average at best. It's just crazy. I don't understand. And then the last one I'd say is Chicago. Chicago's like kind of floating around being an average team right now. But one thing I will say about the Bulls is that the Bulls really need to make a move and get a big time player. They've just been stuck around mediocrity with DeMar DeRozan for a couple of years, who actually had maybe his best year of his career in Chicago in 2022. He was like a borderline MVP candidate. But yeah, I think the Bulls are just floating around mediocrity. They kind of feel like maybe Pittsburgh a little bit, just not this sustained success. And they haven't done anything since Derrick Rose got injured, obviously Jordan in the 90s and stuff like that. The Bulls just haven't done anything. So I'd say those are probably my most disappointing teams. I'd say the Wizards, who, again, I figured they'd be maybe a little more in the mix for the play-in tournament. Not 3-16. Bucks, Mavs, Hornets, and Bulls. I mean, those teams, pretty disappointing to me so far from where I actually had them finishing at, and maybe to this point in the season being better than they are. I just want to know some more things about you. Do you ever plan on getting involved in any sort of sports again in your life? I would, I have helped my friends. Like, we coach a basketball team. And look, it's one of the best things I've done. We actually really helped. And here's the thing is, I played sports for a long time in my life, played basketball, played baseball for a majority of my life, played high school, played all that. And I will say that being able to coach a basketball team to me feels better than being a player. We help some kids make the varsity basketball team for high school. And mind you, basketball is like the hardest sport to make, especially around here. They say it's the hardest team to make, and really anywhere. I mean, it's very limited in terms of roster size and everything like that. And we helped some kids make varsity who tried out, didn't make it. They didn't even make JV, went on and made varsity. They gave a big thank you to us and everything like that. So, it's felt pretty good. It has. That feeling to me is better than any feeling I've ever had as a basketball player. And, I am helping out coaching a team again this year. I didn't do one last year. I'm just really busy around this time of year. Right now, I have finals week coming up this week. I actually just finished my last class for the semester in college. Earlier, like an hour or so ago, before I hopped on the pod here. But And just wintertime is a really busy time of year. So I haven't been able to head coach a team, but I'm one of the main guys on the I'm like my friend is the head coach of the basketball team, and I'm the assistant coach. But I'm there at every practice. I'm there at every game. So basically, we're both the head coaches. So you know, having those kids look up to you and stuff like that. I definitely want to coach. I don't know if I'm ever really going to play again. I may end up joining a league somewhere, an adult league for basketball or something like that at some point. I brought the idea actually up to my friends last year that to play an adult league or something like that. But yeah, no, I don't know about playing right now. I'll tell you something, man. I had been having hip issues at 22 years old. Some reason I go out, I just strain the hell out of my hip all the time. It's not old as hell saying that, but God, so sometimes I just have to refrain from playing a lot. I'm odd, I play hard when I play. I do. But in terms of, I definitely would love to coach, be a head coach of a basketball team. Definitely make a difference for a lot of those players. I will say one thing that I think I was limited as a player because in terms of just my athleticism alone, I definitely had the IQ and stuff like that, making the passes and the 3-point shooting and pitching and stuff like that. But the thing is, when I pitched, I could throw. I had a game where I started off in high school, like 20 strikes and what, 1 or 2 balls or something like that. I was, I took pitching lessons for years with this guy named John Dobson. And he used to play for the Montreal Expos and the Boston Red Sox, and he called me the most accurate pitcher in the state of Maryland. And mind you, this guy has coached pros and everything. He used to say that about me, but I was limited in terms of how fast I could throw a damn fastball. Like I see guys who can't throw a strike. They can throw 90, 95 miles an hour, and I'm stuck here struggling to get above 70. I was limited, and part of that's my fault. I could have spent more times in the gym, and looking back, I would have definitely been in the gym. I would have been in the gym more. I'm just a very slim frame, just kind of an athletic slim frame. I could have definitely upped my fastball more. And who knows what I could be doing. I was just stuck with a really slow fastball in high school and stuff like that. Not a really slow fastball, but just not fast enough to be able to play in high levels. But I threw a ton of strikes. And unfortunately now, I do feel like I could have played at a high level as a pitcher. But now they're just looking at it, who the hell can throw 100 miles an hour and not throw any strikes? It's very unfortunate. I was unfortunately stuck. And you got to remember one thing, too, is that I played in COVID. My sophomore year when I was really starting to gain momentum in terms of getting a lot of playing time, really getting in the pitching rotation and really starting to be recognized, COVID came and just kind of shut the whole momentum thing down. Or shut the whole momentum down and got the varsity and I could go on and say a lot, but I'm not going to. But yeah, definitely in terms of me coaching, I feel like I'm very good at coaching. I do. I feel like I'm very good at it, to be honest with you. Being able to head coach a team and really help out guys who are trying to make varsity and stuff like that, especially basketball and stuff like that. I feel like it's a great feeling to have. So definitely. Venturing in coaching is something I'm looking forward to in the future here, and especially, I got practice this Friday to help coach out. So, I'm going to be there for that. Loving the pod. If you had to pick 2 underwhelming number 1 picks in recent memory, who would it be? Well, I'm going to go one with the NBA and then go one with the NFL. And in terms of recent history, or recent memory, we'll just do recently in general. I'll go one right off the bat. Then we'll start off with the NBA's Zachary Ricochet from, I think it was last year, the Alex Sarr draft and Stephon Castle. Probably the weakest draft in NBA history. Let's say if Ricochet, I'll just go over this briefly because there's not much to talk about. He's actually he's barely coming off the bench for Atlanta right now. I'm not saying his career is set in stone to be a bust, but in terms of being drafted number 1 overall, he's probably going to go down as one of the worst number 1 overall picks in sports history. Doesn't mean he's going to be a bad player, but you're being picked number 1 overall. And you have to feel LeBron's drafted number 1 overall. Wembanyama, you have Anthony Davis. The list goes on and on and on. Shaquille O'Neal for number 1 overall picks. You're going to be listed in a bad group, especially if you're barely coming off the bench in your second year. And his numbers are just plummeting. I think he averages barely like 10 points a game or something like that. He's like 11 points a game, which doesn't sound bad, but he's not taking any leaps in his career. He's actually kind of went backwards. And let's say if Ricochet were to come out in the draft this year, I mean, hell, this year's draft was really good with Cooper Flagg and Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. There's a lot of names. Jeremiah Fears, Jarrett Queen's been playing well. And mind you, I mean, Ricochet wasn't even a good prospect. In terms of being a prospect compared to Cooper Flagg this year, these two, Ricochet and Cooper Flagg, in terms of a prospect, aren't even in the same universe as each other. I mean, how Wembanyama, you're telling me Ricochet and Wembanyama are in terms of being drafted number 1 overall back-to-back years? Those two ain't even in the same class of picks. I mean, if Ricochet were to go this year, he may not even have been drafted in the top 10, to be honest with you. Not saying, he'd be a second-round pick or anything. Probably he'd be borderline a top 10 pick in this year's draft. But you got to remember, a guy who's drafted number 11 or 12 in the NBA draft is expected to be, have some sort of impact on the organization, but he's not expected to be an all-NBA player, maybe average 15, 16, 17 a night or something like that, especially with guys, top of the league scores are averaging 35 a game right now. Just being maybe a third option, Ricochet could be that, but number 1 overall, man, that's a brutal pick there. I'd say him for sure. He's a completely irrelevant number 1 overall pick, and he got drafted number 1 overall a year ago. I'd say in terms of football, hell, there's some of them, man. Let's think. I know this one, people may not like this, and we love him in terms he's funny, but Jameis Winston, I think in terms of him, he's pretty underwhelming, to be honest with you. I think he had 1 Pro Bowl his rookie year, but he's been a backup for years now. I mean, like 5 or 6 years he's been a backup ever since he left Tampa. He backed up Drew Brees in New Orleans. I think he deserved a chance to start New Orleans. He filled in and played really well for Drew Brees when he was hurt. I thought, and then, Dennis Allen didn't put Andy Dalton over him and just didn't refuse to give Winston a chance. And I mean, you just look at his career, he's been incredibly underwhelming in terms of a number 1 overall pick. And from where he, where he was in FSU and stuff like that. I'd say Winston was pretty underwhelming. We love him. He's funny, but in terms of being a number 1 overall pick, he hasn't been fantastic. Trayvon Walker as well. Now, was he in his 3rd, 4th year of his career? He's not having a great year this year. He's been injured a lot. But actually, I have stuck up for Trayvon Walker because he had back-to-back like 10 sack seasons, 10.5, 10 sacks or something like that. So the problem with him is that Aiden Hutchinson got drafted over him. So that just really outshines him, to be honest with you, unfortunately for him. But, in terms of him being a number 1 overall pick, I'd say he's actually been decent. If you wanted to call him underwhelming, I figured I'd just throw his name in there, but I've actually stuck up for him. I don't think he's been as bad as a lot of people said he's as bad as people said he's been. But another 2 names I'd throw in there is Eric Fisher. Look, the thing is with him, though, is just in terms of being drafted number 1 overall as an offensive lineman, you're just kind of limited. When you have guys drafted number 1 overall, I know Caleb Williams is still very unproven, but in terms of hype, you're more worried about the hype of getting a QB and stuff like that. Eric Fisher was good, though. I think he had a couple of Pro Bowl selections and stuff like that. So I guess it's just not an exciting pick, but he was good. He won a Super Bowl with Kansas City, so I wouldn't classify him up there with maybe Winston or anything like that. Sam Bradford's another one, too, that just is extremely underwhelming. So I'd probably list it with those guys, but Fisher and Walker, I wouldn't necessarily put with Winston and Bradford, but figure I'd just throw those names in there as well real quick. So one thing I want to go over real quick, it's not part of Why Not Wednesday, but CP3 cut from the Clippers yesterday. They sent him home. I just want to go over this really briefly. CP3 was one of my favorite players kind of growing up, but big part of my childhood, Lob City Clippers and stuff like that. I was a teenager when they had the Lob City Clippers, end of middle school, like high school, stuff like that, right around there. And I loved watching him with Blake. And mind you, even before Lob City, when he was on a terrible New Orleans team, I think one thing that just kind of derailed Chris Paul was that trade getting vetoed to the Lakers, playing with him and Kobe and stuff like that. That's a topic for another day. But, Chris Paul was in New Orleans. he's one of the best guards to ever touch a basketball. He just is. He's fantastic. Um, I just the way he did there in LA, and mind you, he said that he doesn't care how good the roster is. He doesn't care if he plays. He doesn't care how much they win. He wanted to round out his career in LA. Like, he was supposed to get a tribute video, all that. He didn't care about playing. He just wanted to say that guys that are Hall of Famers that had an impact on the organizations. Look, I get he never won a championship there, but he won a playoff series, won a couple playoff series. Um, you know, it goes beyond him. But there's a reason the Clippers stay the Clippers, and the reason why they're so irrelevant compared to the Lakers that are within the same city as them, the LA Clippers, the LA Lakers, that they just don't even hold they don't even hold a match to the LA Lakers and other organizations. They're completely irrelevant because their organizational moves like that, like, look at what they've done for the Thunder. They've done more benefit for the Thunder than themselves, with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And meanwhile, that the Thunder are 21-1 right now, and they're gonna have the Clippers' first round pick this year, which is looking like it could be the number 1 overall pick in the draft, which is insane. You know, that's why the Clippers stay the Clippers. And he was supposed to go out. Look, he didn't quite have, the input maybe Dirk Nowitzki had on the Mavericks. When Dirk was old and could barely move anymore and just couldn't keep up with the guys, really, he had his tribute video in Dallas. And like I mentioned, his 2011 run in Dallas and stuff like that is unmatched what, Chris Paul's done in terms to the Clippers. But he had some staying power. Or he's had some power in the Clippers organization, and she's won some moments. Hall of Famer. A lot of people remember him there. I think he just deserves the respect of at least not getting cut in his last year. And it's upset a lot of people. A vet who can just kind of stick around, doesn't really care if he plays or not. I just don't see the reason for letting him go. Now, apparently there wasn't as Ty Lue has been an influence on that. Apparently, Chris Paul went to have a little meeting with him. Ty Lue refused. So there's a lot more there. And that's why the Clippers stay the Clippers. I hate seeing it for him. Now, I hope he doesn't retire on those terms. I hope someone picks him up, but we'll see. Apparently, OKC could be in the running to pick him up, and maybe he'll eventually get his rank this year. So we'll see. But yeah, kind of wanted to touch base on that. I just think disrespectful, to be honest with you, in my opinion. I hate seeing that for Chris Paul. That's why the Clippers stay the Clippers. But that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and per usual, everybody, take it easy.